Now, following WorkSafe's webinar last month with the New Zealand Institute for Primary Industry Management, I look forward to catching up with our next guest, McCone from WorkSafe, as he unpacks for us what you need to know around new health and safety regulations, but also what is working and not working when it comes to our reduction in harm into the long term on our farms. And Al joins us now. Evening, Al. Thank you for taking the time.
No problem, Sarah. Great to be here.
Hey, so the thing is with WorkSafe, it's not all about just sharing regulation. WorkSafe absolutely 100% genuinely care about reducing harm on farm. And I understand from the topics within the webinar, there are practical steps to minimise, but also it's not just about the farmer and the family on that farm, but also the rural service professionals around that farm that can help with some engaging conversations. What was some of the feedback from the webinar from the members around the struggles they have to bring up those conversations?
Generally, there wasn't all that much feedback about struggling to have the conversations with rural professionals. I think that what was evident from the feedback that I heard was that a lot of people don't know that they should have those conversations. And a lot of rural professionals, on the other hand, are not necessarily pushing those conversations with farmers simply because they don't want to upset their clients.
Yeah, and they feel it's not their place to have those conversations. But at the same time, behavioural change needs to come from multiple different ways. And, of course, peer support is certainly a way to do that.
Yeah, and I mean, there's, the law actually requires, if you're a supplier or in the supply chain, that you're supplying something which is safe for the people at the other end of the supply chain to use. So, a supplier of any sort of service or goods should be looking and saying, is this the safest thing I can provide? And that what is the way I can talk to my client about using my product safely? Or if you're an advisor, farm consultant, what are the things I'm seeing on this farm where some subtle changes might make life a lot easier and a lot safer or a lot healthier?
And one of those that is part of your major campaign at the moment is seatbelts. Make It Click obviously worked when we were on the open road, but seatbelts are just as important behind the farm gate.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, we all know people that they've been to town, as soon as they turn up their driveway, they undo their seatbelt. It's just, it's sort of like, I'm on my place now, I don't have to wear it. The reality is that 3/4 of fatalities on farms are vehicle fatalities. Half of that vehicle fatality mix is in vehicles with roll cages and with seatbelts. And if you look at all the incidents that cause fatalities where seatbelts could have been worn, 9 out of 10 of those fatalities could have been prevented by someone wearing a seatbelt. And we say that if farmers did two simple things, the number of fatalities involving vehicles would halve. And that is put crush protection on your quads and wear your seatbelt in your tractor, your ute, your side-by-side, and any other vehicle that you're using on the farm.
Absolutely. So some simple tips there. And just to do those simple things, we're going to reduce the number of incidents on farm dramatically. And there has been changes to the health and safety regulations in New Zealand. What are some that have slipped under the radar that people aren't aware of?
Well, I think the one that surprises me the most is the awareness of the regulations around chemicals on farms. I think that's the biggest one. I think the other one is from the Act change in 2015. One of the things that was included in the Act was the requirement that if you can, you need to eliminate the risk. And it's only if you can't eliminate the risk that you then look at at doing a mitigation. What we're seeing on farms is farmers going, I've got a risk, so I'll wear some PPE and I'll use a standard operating procedure. They're actually quite low levels of control because they're reliant on the person doing something right. If you've got a standard operating procedure, it means you've got to do everything right. However, if you use a higher level of control, like a seatbelt or like guarding on your machinery, if you make a mistake, the likelihood you're going to be seriously harmed is a lot less. What we need to see and what the law is aiming at is farmers moving away from just relying on themselves being perfect all the time into the space where they're saying, an accident might happen because I get tired, because I've got so many things on my mind. Why don't I put in place something that if I do make an accident, at least I'll go home rather than in a box?
Yeah, absolutely. It's to eliminate the outcome and make sure it's better than what it could be. But when at some point, does an accident simply become an accident in the eye of the law, and people aren't directly always having to be at fault?
Well, I think there's two things here. What the law says that everyone in the workplace has a responsibility. And one of the things that you'll see in our latest campaigns is about if you can sense it, you can stop it. And that's the ones with the meerkats. One of the things is everyone has a responsibility to speak up if they think harm is going to occur. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, yes, accidents do happen. And if you've taken all practicable steps that you can take, then there won't be any sort of prosecution. But here's the kicker on that. When we look back and we look at when accidents happen and why they happen and those sort of things, there's very few that are genuine accidents. Quite often, there's several steps back where people knew they were tired, but they kept on going and doing something because of the pressures of the workplace. They had to get for instance, the cattle settled because tomorrow the TB guy is coming and he won't do them if I've just brought them into the yard, and things like that. So there are all sorts of pressures on farmers, and those pressures cause at times decision making, which is good for the farm, but isn't necessarily the right decision in terms of being safe in the workplace. And I think a longer term discussion that the whole agricultural community is going to have at some stage is simply the way we work on farms. Where you sometimes see it being buggered at the end of the day is almost a badge of honour. Whereas, what we do know is over half the fatalities occur after 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And they don't occur to young guys being reckless or people who don't know what they're doing. They occur to farmers who have been on the properties for some time and are doing something they've done lots of times before, but this time they've made the mistake. And when you track that mistake back, quite often there's an urgency in what they're doing, or it's sort of like, I'm going to do this before we go away on holiday. How many times have you heard that story?
Well, yeah, I was just about to actually ask you about that because, of course, it's International Women's Day, and Safer Farms have done an incredible campaign with Plant a Seed for Safety, encouraging the woman in people's lives to be that person that can plant that little seed in their mind and say, just remember to be safe. But they're also most commonly, the one that goes, you know what, you need a day off. We're going to go boating. We're going to have a picnic down by the river and go camping with the kids, to just be able to actually take some time to breathe. But just as you pointed out, we always rush and try and do too much before we go away. So it's counterintuitive.
Yeah. And I mean, it's sort of like, we all know that there isn't much cash in farming, right? So actually going away for a week from the farm or for a period from the farm is quite a cost, unless you've got somewhere to go or something to do. So how many farmers have their week off on farm and they're looking out out the window, sort of going, I've got that to do, I've got that to do. One of the best things that both partners can do is say, okay, let's have a staycation, but let's put the emphasis on things around the house, and we're only going to work for these hours, and actually make it quite rigid about what they are and aren't going to do, and sticking to that, because the bottom line is in 5 days' time or 7 days' time, when you go back to the farming tasks, your mindset is in a much better place.
Absolutely, 100%. You're more productive, so therefore more profitable in the long run, just as much as being alive, which is what we certainly want to encourage. And thank you so much, Al, for everything that you do at WorkSafe. And of course, that is the mission. Let's see what place we're in 12 months' time. If we can actually just grow a pair, I know that's a bit colloquial for me, but actually have those tough conversations and know that it is not a badge of honour to say that you're so busy and so tired. So let's try and change the conversation, but to do that we have to change our attitudes, ourselves and the people around us, and that's the best thing you can do to keep your loved ones safe. I don't know if I can say it any more to the point.